Okay, guys, so it is 6:15 on the dot. We have some members this evening that are going to be delayed. I have a couple of emails to that effect. But we do have 9 at this point, so it is a quorum. So we'll go ahead and call the May 13th, 2019 regularly scheduled SAU 44 Joint School Board meeting to order. And we'll start with a roll call to just ensure we establish the quorum. So Shane Wells, Stephanie Arroyo,
here.
Amy Hanneman,
Here.
Brian Winslow,
Here.
Keith McGuigan.
Here.
Okay, so we've got 4 from Northwood. Christine Dabrio,
Here.
Kathy Brosnan,
Here.
Susan Levinson, here. Rosalind Shavda, I think may be delayed. Kelly Gordon.
Here.
Okay, so we've got 4 from Nottingham. Bruce Patrick, Debbie Hendrickson will be delayed. Misty Lowe indicated a week or 2 ago that she had a conflict this evening. Erica Helm will be delayed. Carrie McMahon. Here we go. So at this point we have 1 from Stratford. So there's our 9 total, and as people come in, we'll adjust that number as we go through. So we can conduct business. All right, so first up on our agenda, we have public comment, and there is no public here. So we'll move on from that. So we'll move to page 4, and we'll look at the approval of our minutes from April 8th. And we can roll through by page if that works for everyone.
Do you want a motion to approve first, and then we'll adjust
Sure.
them, or I'll
Yes.
make a motion to approve the minutes as written?
Second.
Okay. So we have Mr. McGuigan and Ms. Hanneman. Okay. Mr. Winslow?
Page 4, line 17, it says Mr. McGuigan nominated Mr. Winslow for joint vice chair. That's great, thank you. And then it says with Mr. Winslow abstaining, I was absent, so I didn't abstain, I just was absent.
Okay.
Congratulations.
You did.
Thank you.
You did abstain, just from afar.
Abstain, yeah, in abstention. That's all I
We used to have fun meetings at work where they would say, we're going to assign something to someone. Yeah.
We never do that.
But I think it's great. I think it's great.
had. That's fine, thank you.
I think it's going to be a wonderful thing.
Chair here. Chair here.
Oh, no problem. Page 5. And we now have 5 from Nottingham. That brings us to 10. Okay, so we're on to page 5 now of the April 8th meeting minutes. I had one thing on line 67. It says, Ms. Levinson said it was fair to say that the board felt that the unassigned fund balance seemed higher than anticipated. Actually, it was the budget deficit that I was looking at that seemed higher than we had anticipated.
Does that change the next sentence as well then? Oh.
So we're okay on page 5?
Well, because the line after that, because Ms. Henderson agreed and then she thought that that money should be back to the town. Is that the same, the budget deficit, is that the same to reduce the tax impact?
Yeah, well, I know that when I was looking at it, what I cited at the pretty much almost the quote was that we had anticipated we would have a $35,000 budget overspend due to the accrued payroll items, but we had not anticipated having such a large budget overrun that we saw on our.
Well, I think that what you're referring to is in line 64. Because they talked about the overdraft for appropriations. and then the reduction of the fund balance by 36,000.
So, okay, again, I guess on 64 then, it would be the budget deficit. And if you want to leave 67 the same, that's fine. Is there anything else? Okay, moving on to page 6. Yeah, busy meeting, presentations, and moving on to page 7. Page 8. Nine. 10. 11. Woohoo, this is good. All right then, so we have a motion for the approval of the minutes as written. And we have one change on line 64. Did you want to make an amendment to accept the change and then back into it, or?
You want me to do that? Sure, I will put on the motion to accept the amendments offered by the board.
Okay. Do we have a second for that? Second. Okay, so we'll vote on that first, and then we'll back into the original approval. Okay, so all those in favor of the amendment on line 64? Okay, that looks like a unanimous vote in favor, and that means it's 10 in favor, none opposed. And then we'll go back into our original motion, which was to approve the minutes as written, and now they have that change. So all in favor of that? Okay, we have a couple of abstentions.
Abstain because I wasn't here.
Okay, and how many abstentions? 2. So we have 8 in favor with 2 abstentions. Is that good? All right. Alrighty. Next item, we have the manifests I see sitting toward the middle of the table. Those are the payable manifests that will circulate. And if you have any questions on those during the course of the meeting, we can address those as we go. Next up, we have the business administrator's report.
Okay, I'll be short and sweet. Not much has changed since the last time I presented. We're a little over $30,000 to the good on the SAU budget. We will finish in the black, which is always the goal. Preschool is, I'll use business terminology, is running a profit, which once we get into the summer, that will be reconciled and returned on a prorated basis to the various districts. And the IDEA grants, there's not much difference since they were presented in more detail at the last board meeting. And our project for the new software, we are deeply into configuration and training, and expect to go live July 1st still.
Does anyone have any questions? Hi, Erica. Okay, we now have, I think you can probably grab a chair right there. We now have 2 from Stratford, and we're up to 11. So Erica, so far we've approved the meeting minutes from the 8th, and we just heard the financial report, which it starts on page 13. So we can take a moment for review, and if there are any questions on the financial report, we can go through those. Everyone's good with the preschool financials and the SAU financials? No questions or anything? All right then, fantastic. Thank you. Well, you shall move on to the Director of Student Services report.
So there is not a report included in this packet as I reported at the local levels, all the important information. However, if there were any questions that you might have regarding what I'd reported previously, I'd be more than happy to go over it.
Okay. Do you have any questions about special education at the SAU level? In general, everyone is good. All right. You didn't take much of your 15 minutes there.
Mr. Running said keep it short.
We're ceding all of our time to the superintendent.
Alrighty. Very good then. At our last meeting, I'm sorry. Superintendent's report, starting on page 30.
Personnel reports on page 30. As you know, our paraprofessionals are there when kids are there in the preschool. So we put in some intent to hires so we can pay them to be first aid trained outside of their work time. So I'll nominate Danielle Dowdy, Amy Bilodeau, Jennifer Crenshaw, and Jennifer Call. You can see the total salaries there. And the source is your IDEA grant, so we can get them up to snuff on their first aid training.
These folks are already employees, you just want to do some additional training.
Right.
I make a motion we accept the nomination of these 4 people.
You have a motion from Kathy to accept the nomination of staff as voted on page 30. Do we have a second? Stephanie's made the second. Is there any conversation on that?
I just have a question. These are the amounts that will be paid, that
You're
you're paying them to go to training. It's not the amount that you're paying for training.
Right, correct. Is there hourly rates to be trained?
So what, are you having to pay for training as well?
Yes, I had to bring in a consulting nurse to come in and do that.
Okay, is that already done? Because I know the nurse in Northwood would probably do it as part of her job. You know, like I know she's a certified.
It is already done. It's someone that we,
Okay.
it's one of our consortiums that we consult with on a regular basis.
All right, thanks.
Does that include CPR?
Yes.
It does.
Yeah, if you look at your preschool budget, you got your nurse consultant for, is it Jen? Is it? What's her name?
Jen Basham?
Yeah.
Special ed, and I've forgotten everything.
Yeah. It's Mr.
Yeah, you have a contracted amount for your nurse consultant in your preschool lines. The first aid training will come out of that. It's Jen Basham, your nurse, who comes up and takes care of the screenings and everything else. But we'll keep that in mind.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
good enough.
I know she's certified for doing CPR and
Right.
I'm sure for first aid, I should
Right.
do EMT stuff. So
And we may be able to include them in the Northwood trainings.
yeah.
The only difference in this one, this is during a normal school day, but not a normal student day. So this is taking place on
come in a different time. Yeah.
right. This is taking place on a Friday where the K-8 students are in session, but our preschoolers are not.
Yep.
So the teachers are there. That's why you don't see a hire sheet for teachers already there.
Okay.
So that would be the only catchy part because
Right.
it would be hard to do.
No, you
that.
still work or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Send them to the school or something. Yeah. I don't think she's working full out every day all day, but maybe.
She's busy at lunch, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Don't
Okay.
kill me for saying that.
I made a note.
Carrie, you take that.
It'll cost you.
So do we have any additional conversation, questions, discussion on this motion? All right, hearing none then, all those in favor of using the IDEA funds for the nomination of staff for this training? All right, anyone opposed or abstaining? So we have 11 in favor, that motion carries unanimously. Unusual. All right. So, at our last meeting, the management committee had a meeting. We had talked about the superintendent's contract, and we had also talked about goals, and we had talked about the governance policy. And at our, just prior to our last meeting. So at our last meeting, we felt that we didn't have the time available to do justice to the conversation on the governance policy, so we're including it in this packet. So there were a lot of edits, if you will, from the member boards at the local level to the governance policy proposal, the draft, which you can find on page 35. So there it is. And since then, I think it was Sunday, we had a proposal from Mr. McGuigan to change it to something different. When we spoke, and correct me when I'm wrong here, and pick up where need be,
Yeah.
but when we talked about it at the management committee, we kind of said, at the end of the day, it sounds like people are more interested in having fewer meetings, perhaps, than having a full-blown situation like this. So let's talk about that. So I'm going to hand it to you so we can get a well-rounded conversation.
So we did go over this in the management committee, and there were some concerns raised by some of the local boards that they were looking at some change to this, and that would maybe be in conflict with the basic idea of having fewer meetings and having representation. So we kind of did, informally. I think we just kind of decided to table it, maybe look at it again, and come back with some different ideas. And so I spent a little bit of time just doing some research and thinking about it, and I actually think I came up with something that kind of follows the law a lot closer and is much, much simpler, and simple is good for these things. So I just printed out, I have not had a chance to discuss, this was Sunday, and we haven't had a management committee meeting, so we didn't have a chance to discuss it. So really, this is just my proposal, and really what we should probably do with it is take a look at it. If people like it or don't like it or whatever, then you can give direction to the management committee and we can go refine it or throw it away or whatever. So I just wanted to get this into your hands so you could look at it before that, try to get things moving. So I don't know how many copies I have. It may not be.
I made a few too, so I may be able to help you out. I'm trying to find
But this would replace the,
I'll pass another one.
Here we go.
How many do you need? Oh, you got it.
is there enough
Or
for,
to keep one for myself right now?
Are we good?
I don't,
Do you have enough down there?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
you got one already.
Thank
Oh, cool.
you.
So I'll let you guys read that for a sec, but the basic idea is if you look at the law RSA 194-C:7, and there's a :8(2). The basic idea behind that is that each district gets proportional representation in a joint board meeting. Each district with a school gets, and they say 3 votes there. Districts without a school, which we have none, get 1 vote in that. So this kind of just follows that law, and I think it's kind of what we can do anyway, or should be doing anyway, is getting proportional representation in these meetings. So this would be just a proposal to maybe make this as part of our policy in general and hold our votes this way. The idea being that each district gets 3 votes, and those votes are equally divided amongst the members that are present. So with, like, say, 2 Stratford representatives here, you would each have a vote and a half on every issue, right? And since we have 3, 4 Northwood people, we'd each get 3/4 of a vote. Right? All right? Yeah,
Like
3/4 of a vote each.
0.6, I think?
0.6 if 5 members are here. We only have 4 members
So
here.
you'd have to keep playing with it.
Yeah, so it does make it would make it a little harder for the chair to count votes, I think. But what I really like about doing this, aside from simplicity, is that it really gives the districts and the individuals in the districts all the power in how they want to do things. Right? If all the districts want to have everybody here for every meeting to discuss this and exercise their authority, they can do that. If another district, has enough trust to give to one person, say, can you represent our interests at the meeting, they can do that too. Because if one person, they say Northwood elects, Brian to come represent Northwood at these meetings, which could happen, right? Brian would,
Meeting.
Shane's out.
yeah. So Brian at that point would wield, the Northwoods 3 votes to vote on, and and then we were trusting to report back on any discussions and stuff like that. So it really just takes all of the power and kind of gives it back to the local boards on how they want to do things, and they don't even have to be the same. Like Northwood could do something totally different than Stratford, or Nottingham could do. And it could be different for every meeting, even, right? Like you could do it for one meeting and then there's a contentious thing. And
Okay, that
more
just
people
sounded
show
like
up.
chaos, that last bit.
Yeah.
Well,
It could be different for every meeting.
It would
Only how
be
you
different.
allocate the.
Different than the number of people that have to show
yes.
up. I mean, the meetings would still be the same, right?
Okay.
And the 3 votes would stay the same.
The 3 votes would stay the
Whether or
same.
not they're divided by 1 person or 5
Or
people.
5 people, or 3 people, or whatever, right? If there's 3 people here, each person will get 1
So
full
it's not,
vote.
there's no disincentive for people to come to the meeting.
Right, well, other than if you trust that you're going to be represented by whoever is at the meeting. Right, that's where you have to make that decision, right? If you want to come to the meeting and make sure your voice is heard, then you would get that share as well, So if you read the law, it looks like you're entitled to do this anyway. Like I'm not convinced that we couldn't, on any vote we have here tonight, say, hey, I want the vote to be, based on the proportional representation or whatever, and you would have. I think we would have to do that because I think that's what the law says. The law says you're entitled to 3 votes, and every district's entitled to 3 votes. So like, if 5 Northwood people here and 1 Stratford person's here, I think you'd be entitled to ask for full representation of his vote in using this formula. So it's kind of something I think we could be done anyway by someone just saying at every vote, well, I want to do that proportionally, I want to do that proportionally, which may be a pain in the butt, but.
Make sure you get 1 person to show up.
Right.
Well, yeah, right. And if you don't get 1 person to show up, then
Then you have a different problem.
yeah. And so the second part here is the quorum.
Oh, that was my question.
Yep. The second part is quorum, so you would need, realistically for us, it'd be 9 votes total for all things, right? So you would need 4.5 here, which would be 6. So you'd have to have at least representation from 2 districts, in order to even have a quorum, which makes sense. It's like a 3-person board, so you need 2 people for that. And then the last part here, this is not anything that's written in law. The last 2 parts really aren't, but the last part here is just something to say that any of these packets, these agendas, all this stuff will come to the local boards first, so that we have the opportunity to look at them and then decide if we're going to, have someone represent us in the joint board or not, or that we all want to go and say our piece or whatnot, right? So it's just it just makes sure that the administration would get us the materials that we need to make that decision, make an informed decision at our local board meeting prior to coming to one of these meetings. So our meetings from last week, or the week before, which may be, Mr. Rooney, I'd like to hear your opinion on that part, because that may be a bit of a pain in some situations, right? When it's like 2 weeks ahead of, right?
I just want to say one quick thing.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to
although-
keep the quorum up so everyone's aware of what we're dealing with for the votes and everything. We now have 12 members present, and Stratford now has 3 members. Debbie, we've been moving through rather efficiently, and we're we're talking about the governance policy. There's been oh, you have it? Do you have it on
This
your
is the new
place?
thing that you just
Okay.
passed out. we're
So
not really
basically it's
discussing what was in the packet.
Just being passed out tonight for people to look at, think about, and then at a future meeting to talk about.
Well, we're looking for, I think if we
Some
could get
direction
some direction
to-
from the board to the management committee, that'd be, and then we can meet as management committee and either draft policy or make whatever changes people really want to see.
And Mr. Rooney was about to address just the 3rd paragraph, and then I have some things that I would like to share from the school board's administration, and then perhaps we can have comment.
I'd like to share something whenever you're done, Scott.
Well, let me just
You
get
can
through
go
the whole,
for it.
no, that's all right, let me just get through
Okay.
the school board's piece and, okay.
Am I answering right now?
You
Yeah,
were
well,
looking
just-
at the 3rd paragraph.
Yeah, can I sort of defer that, because I gotta look at the board meeting schedules to be able to, and I haven't had time. I apologize, I got this over the weekend and it's Monday.
I just want to make sure you're not looking at this and being like, oh my God, no,
Oh, that was my first. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, but let me take some time this week and look at the calendars and how that would work, because it seems to me, and it could be wrong, is that Stratford may get the information rather late, just by the way the meetings fall, but let me take a look at that tomorrow.
So, for tonight, I think that what I found, I talked to Will Phillips at the New Hampshire School Boards Association this afternoon because I wanted to be prepared for the conversation. And he referred me back to 194C7 and 194C8, weighted voting. He said the two kind of go hand in hand. So his take on it was that he thought the quorum would still have to be at the 15, but a board could perhaps do policy about what they define quorum as. He indicated that throughout the state, what he typically sees around things like that is that the second caveat to quorum would be that you'd have to have some representation from every board. So that was one thing that he mentioned. He said a lot of boards do it the way we've been doing it, and even though it's different from what 194C7 says, it seems to be workable. He indicated that the reason for this is that you could have a joint board that has a large district that's 7 members and a small district that has only 3. And so no matter, even if you always all show up, the 7, if they vote in a block, are always going to outvote the 3. So that's what the genesis of this was with the 3-3-3. He indicated the 0.6 per, depending, we already talked about that. He also said, though, take a look at 194C8, which is weighted voting, and I thought I made more copies. I may have had my printer run out.
That was handed out to us in an email, the weighted voting in April, when we had those questions to the quorums and weighted voting. We have those documents.
Okay. So the weighted voting that he expressed to me was that you would look, any board that's here tonight, regardless if we were doing this 3-3-3 thing, if one board said, like, what do we've got 5 Nottingham here. One member of Nottingham could say, I want weighted voting on the minutes. Well, why would you? But let's just say, on a vote-by-vote basis, they could say, I want weighted voting. And if the majority of the Nottingham board agreed, then it would be weighted voting across. And it would be based on ADM. So you get 1 vote for every 8.
That was 16.
It's 16 and
It's
then the
16.
8s round up.
Yeah, okay.
If you have
So,
over 8.
for every 16, and you have to go by the ADM of the prior year. So it would be Nottingham with an ADM of 723, Northwood 639, and Stratford 643. He said usually, because joint boards are similar to a marriage, you don't usually do that.
Right.
And so that's another area that he said that definitely comes into play with all of this.
Yes.
Excuse me, Sue, did you say 1 for every 8 or 16?
16.
16.
So for every 16 students, you get 1 vote, and then
So basically, the district that has the most students would have the most power. if we did it that way.
each district shall be entitled to 1 vote for each 16 pupils residing in that district and enrolled in schools under the administrative unit. A balance of 8 or more shall entitle that district to an additional vote. So a leftover remainder. So anyway, weighted votes will be based upon the demand of a majority of the members of the board present. So that's what he explained.
And we actually have those documents in your email. I think it was the first week in April or so. So remember, we had a problem, and we thought we could still vote because there was a quorum when we came out. And then the SAU researched that information and weighted voting, and we had it was like a 10-page document that was sent to us. So everybody's got that.
So he also pointed me to a policy. He said the policy is not quite what it needs to be at this point. He's going to be updating it for perhaps the spring update. It's BBBHR. So
Say it again, please. I'm sorry.
BBBH-R, and I'm passing out a copy. I think I made enough. So that's pretty much the conversation, I think. Did you have any more?
I would like to say, Misty Lowe is our representative, Stratford's representative from the SAU Management Committee, and I know this was discussed. Stratford gave their input to the governance, the proposed governance policy that we're not looking at right now. And what Misty said, that a lot of the changes that we were interested in weren't, I think Nottingham was also interested in it, but they weren't included in.
Well, we kind of came to, we said we just hand it out as is. Everybody at the board meeting could say what they felt. And we tabled it at the last meeting.
I just want to finish.
Okay.
Okay, but basically, what Misty expressed to us, and I think our board, and it seems to be what I'm hearing from the joint board is, the big issue is, everybody wants fewer meetings. I know that when we got together with our board, we came up with 6, possibly 7 months that we really needed to have a meeting. And this is just based on experience of knowing that you have to have 2 meetings in a row to look at your budget. Then you have to have your public hearing for your budget. Then you have to have in February you do your evaluation. April, you do your reorg and look at contracts, renewal of staff and that type of thing. And then you finish up in June. That's all you have to have. And so we could cut our meetings by half. And what I would suggest is that we do that. We come up with a calendar to cut our meetings by half, or at least cut it down to 7 meetings a year. And then, if that isn't working, if we feel that, our agendas are too heavy or, whatever, then we look to see if there's something else we can improve. But I think the overwhelming feeling is there are too many meetings. And people want to have fewer meetings. So I don't see why we don't start with, we talked about this a couple of years ago. We never did it. The only meeting we cut out was July. I think it's time to say, okay, let's come up with a calendar. And
Did you want to to make a directive to the management committee to look at that between now and June?
Yeah.
And then maybe talk about having fewer meetings from June on, or what are your thoughts as a group?
The one thing I worry about with having fewer meetings is that the meetings will get very long. Personally, I do much better with more frequent, not long meetings. But if they can be cut down fewer and be efficient, I'm all for it, I think.
We do try to manage the time on these, put the time there and try to, as a
Yeah, that's
guide
been helpful,
marker,
I
but
think.
still
Right.
allow the conversation and
yeah,
cover things, so.
it seems like the agendas have been moving a lot quicker than they were, with now having the times allotted for each topic. I think the things that can be handled at the district meeting should be handled at the district meetings. And then the rest, we could
Couldn't
do
you
it.
do both?
They're totally disjoint ideas.
Just
I'm
a
sorry.
note on the length
They're
of the.
totally disjoint ideas. I mean, reducing the
You can do
meetings
them
and
both.
having and the proposal we have out here.
The way the meeting
They're
functions.
both doable, They
Yep.
don't interfere with each other. They're kind of unrelated.
Right, so right now, we're at the mini proposal, if you will, compared the draft for the mini is more about allotting the 3 votes
Right.
per, and then doing the mathematics on that for every meeting. And
I mean, if you were to do this, if there's a weighted vote, then you need to do it, you have to follow, like you said, it's 194C8, and that is the district that has the most students gets the most power. And that's why we don't do it that way, because as you said,
Where does those 3 votes come from?
that's
3 votes
3
is
votes is at
C7.
C7.
Okay, so then
Your
what,
weighted vote,
which
so
one
there are
is
2,
which?
I'm gonna pass these out, I only have one of each.
there
so
are
I'll
2
let you guys-
statutes that interplay. So
So-
there's 7 and 8, right? So 7 says that each of the 3 boards will get 3 votes, total of 9 votes. 8 says that if you use the weighted vote, you've got to add that mathematical equation to those 9 votes.
Okay,
So,
do you have to do both 7 and 8? That's what I'm,
No,
wanna
the
know.
board,
Right.
one of the boards, you could
Yeah.
say in
You'd have-
Stratford tonight, we want a weighted vote, and if the majority of the Stratford members present wanted it, they
Sure,
would
no,
vote.
I get that, but can you do 3 votes and not do weighted votes?
Sure.
sure.
Can, unless one of the boards says we want a weighted
Unless,
vote.
okay.
Which is the way it is right now, too. I mean, like any vote we do
Well,
tonight.
now it's 5,
Yeah,
we could
not
be-
3.
I guess I'm
No,
not
right.
sure what is the
No, but-
purpose
No, but
of,
still weighted voting.
So that we all don't have to come to meetings if we can't make it and still be represented.
We'd still
So
have
it
to
doesn't
talk
matter if you
about,
have 3 or 5
so
people
so
here,
you
you only
could
get 3
have,
votes.
you could have 2 people from your district come and you still get the same amount of votes?
And- right.
Then why would anybody come to the meeting?
That's the point.
I really feel that is, why aren't we just keeping it that people come to the meetings, because that's your responsibility, you were elected to do that.
But if we feel comfortable with
Right.
our board members being our representatives, that should be up to us as our board.
Right, for your board, right.
Right, so if you guys don't want to do that, you're perfectly
So we'll get
fine.
all 5 votes.
no, you
No.
only get 3,
Yeah,
you're still
yeah,
only
right,
managed
yeah.
at
Right,
3.
even if we have 5 people
What
here.
does it matter? It's all proportional.
Right. You can call it 5. I mean, we could
5
change
or
it to 5.
3.
Well,
I think there's some
Proportional
things.
if you call for a weighted vote. It's not proportional if you don't call for a
You
weighted
can.
You
It's
can.
proportional, or if you're just following.
If you're just following 3 and 3 and 3.
vote. Right, but that,
Right, it's not, right, it's not a
I have a
list.
suggestion.
Mr. Ruby has a thought on this?
I think that,
No.
I think it's a good, rich, healthy conversation to have. I also think it's a pretty complicated topic in application. So I would think it might be smart for me to get some like analysis, legal opinions
Sure.
from Gordon, like, okay, Gordon, what's gonna happen? You know, give us a document to bring back to the board to say, here are your potential pitfalls, challenges, here are the good things, here, you know, and then at least you have some information
The
from
intent-
outside the table.
The intent here was just,
Yeah.
this is the beginning, this is their proposal,
Yeah.
and like,
Yeah.
if the board is on board with it, we'd send it to the management committee, we'd get legal opinion, we talked about, I mean, that was the path I expected this to take,
Okay.
you know,
All right.
for sure. Like, it wasn't something that wasn't gonna be decided tonight, other than.
Right, I just want to make sure we're not operating in the world of unintended consequences.
Right, no.
Kelly, you have a thought?
So even now, as we are sitting here, someone could call for either one of these ways of voting, the 3-person voting or the weighted vote.
Yes.
I think
So
so.
they're two separate,
You definitely could do a C8 and
Right.
say
We want to wait.
Nottingham wants a weighted vote.
And
You
Stratford
could say
is
it, and
number
if you
2.
got the rest of us from Nottingham to say, yeah, we like that, we want a weighted vote tonight on this item, it would be vote by vote,
really.
then we
Correct.
could weight it. Like if it came up to budget or something, we could say, we want a weighted vote on budget, you'd say it, and if you could get the rest of just Nottingham, to say, the majority of Nottingham would say, yes, we want it, then it would happen, and Nottingham would get their votes plus their 1 vote per 16 of ADM.
So I think Nottingham, I did the math, that's the kind of person I am. So that way Nottingham would have like 48 votes to Stratford Northwood's 43 votes. So it's pretty close, it'd be
Stratford has
very
more votes than
very different,
than-
very unreasonable to think that would make a difference, but it could in some situations.
I think Stratford would actually end up with more votes.
We have more votes, we have more people.
Just a few
They have
more.
at least 16 more.
One
But I
thing
did the
that,
math based on what
Yeah.
the numbers you just said. Yeah.
one thing Will said to me today
You
was,
have the numbers wrong?
when I told him the ADM numbers, he asked me about the ADM numbers for each town. And he asked about the size of the boards for each town. And he asked which towns we were talking about. And he said, what are you paying? What's everyone paying? And I said roughly 40% for Nottingham, and maybe just right at a third, and a slightly, little tad under and a little tad over. So basically, the other 60% is being almost split evenly. And he said, again, to just reiterate, a lot of this comes from this disparity. He said there's a district out west that has multiple towns. The biggest district that would have the most voting power, if you will, has a lot of students that are in private schools. So their ADM is down, and they lose their oomph, I guess, whatever. So it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But
I think that this definitely has to go back to the individual boards, and I hope that our representative on the managing committee is listened to this time, because I
think she was, but
I heard not too much positive things were happening with that committee.
Maybe you should come to committee meetings to find out for yourself instead of guessing.
okay,
I'm not
so
guessing.
Because I was there.
in June we're planning. Hey, guys,
Yeah.
in June we're planning to have a meeting, correct?
Mhm.
And we would probably like to not have a July meeting, I would assume.
Mhm.
So for June, if you'd like to take some action on this, and it's here for your information, do you have any guidance, directive for your management committee or otherwise, so that come June, something could be put in front of you that would be a vote?
I would like to look at a calendar of the months that we could cut out meetings, because I don't think we need to have a meeting every month. I think that's what started this, was people felt that there were too many meetings.
Am I
Okay.
wrong in saying that we did that?
We did look at that, yes, we did, and we never followed through on it, yes.
So
We've
let's
done it twice, I think.
let's plan on following through on it.
Yes,
I think it was a few years, several.
we did, that's what, at least we got rid of July.
Okay, so calendar,
1 year and
yes.
5 years, 1 year.
I think this is a pretty interesting idea, and I would like to get an analysis from the superintendent on it as well, for the management committee. And one thing I don't know legally, I would like a legal opinion. The third paragraph talks about getting documents to board members beforehand. I don't know if that could be substituted with emails, as we get our joint board packets ahead of time as an email and as a paper copy. Just that would potentially make it a more feasible thing to accomplish.
Oh, to get it or email instead of like at the meeting before. Is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
and again, just illegal, I don't know if that would be allowed or not, but it seems like that might be one of the hang-ups, so that might be something to analyze as well.
So we usually email the joint board packets the Monday before, so the full week before, and then they hit the mail that day as well. So Nottingham's first and third Wednesday. Stratford is second and fourth Wednesday. And your Northwood's first and third Thursday. So bringing it to meetings would get it to Stratford at their fourth meeting, which is a Wednesday, later than they would get it otherwise. But
Well, I think later is probably not. I mean, as long as it's before, later is probably
Before
okay.
they
It's
get
the
it.
earlier. I think that's going to be the problem because
Yeah.
it would all have to be prepared by the office a week
Right.
ahead, more than
Right, you
2
gotta
weeks ahead of
turn an
time now.
agenda, we're already turning an agenda around.
Right.
We started it 10 days before,
Right,
and now we'd have to start on it, I don't know, I'd have to look and analyze.
right, right. I think that's
I
more of a
don't-
concern.
Yeah, I don't know logistically how well we do. I also don't know how well we do logistically if for some reason, I'll just use Stratford as an example, if you don't mind, like all of a sudden we have a meeting in Stratford and it's light and they decide to cancel that meeting at the local level, which happens,
Right.
or if somebody didn't have a quorum, or then we're sort of stuck, right? Because now we're relying on the functioning of 4 boards. You know what I mean? It's just something to think about, and I haven't given it a tremendous amount of thought yet. But I'd be more than happy. I think the third paragraph doesn't have much to do with the RSA.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
But
Well, I think he's asking about like
what I
not
would,
right to know, like how would it interact with right to know?
oof,
If we're sending out, I think that was the question.
I don't know.
Was this put together by the management committee?
No, I did that.
no, we didn't. We didn't meet. So this came out on Sunday, and that's why we're just getting it out here. And the management committee is making a formal request to the board for some direction.
But our management committee person hasn't seen this.
Yes,
Nobody's
well,
voting on it.
We all just
I-
saw it tonight.
Okay,
Yeah, so
I
this is
actually
just
emailed
for
it to you.
information only
okay,
tonight.
I believe she has seen it.
okay. Well,
But
she
just
hasn't,
this
she didn't
weekend.
give us our.
She hasn't seen you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask some pointed questions. Would the board like the management committee to continue to spearhead this project?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, can I just?
Should we
Yes.
go for a vote? The project being, looking into reducing the meetings, or investigating C7, or investigating C8? I just want to.
I would say that it would mean looking at this option, having the one that just came to you, just the 3-paragraph piece on the 3 votes each, and then having the information. So get the local feedback. Look at a calendar of months to, like every other month, to have like a 6-meeting schedule. Have the superintendent provide an analysis of what it would take in terms of administrative work to provide it to the local boards, and have a legal analysis of C7, C8, and the language here, and what policies might be required, and things that, quite frankly, I can't detail because I don't know what they might be.
Would it be possible for us to have all of that information at our local boards before our June meeting, so that we could come to the June meeting with,
That information?
able to act if that's what we decide we want to do? I don't know if that's possible, but, because otherwise, I feel like if I receive all of that information in June, I'm not sure I'm gonna be ready to
Right,
respond, so that's fine.
so we'd have to get a
Which
legal
is also
opinion.
fine, but
Or we receive it in June and then
we don't have
Vote on
we
it.
act on the next one.
Yeah,
Oh,
it'd be
August.
Right, it'd be August. Which
Which
may be fine.
Right,
I mean,
which is
it's
also
not-
fine,
yeah,
I
I
just
mean,
would say one way or the other.
When is
I
Stratford's
wouldn't expect us
next
to get the
meeting?
information.
We are Wednesday.
Stratford's Wednesday too.
Yeah.
Oh, Okay,
But
Right
and then
next
your
to-
Thursday,
They're Thursday.
so this week, all the boards are meeting,
Mhm.
but we're not going to have this information this
Correct.
week. Next week, nobody meets.
Correct.
The third week, you're off cycle then tomorrow.
Yes, we change according to
Need.
our needs. So we're not always, we're scheduled for the 2nd and 4th, but sometimes we change it.
Stratford's next meeting is the 12th after this Wednesday. Right?
So
There
could
we
we
go.
be,
It is, it's the 12th and the 26th for sure.
12th and the 26th, yes, we went over that the other day.
Yes.
so would it be possible to have that information by that date to everybody, so they could look at it at their local? I think we could probably do that, that's almost a month out, or,
When is our next?
Mr. Rooney has the schedule.
No, the management team, I think. What are you asking?
Oh,
When-
we have that?
No, the next,
Who-
next joint board meeting is the 10th.
The 10th of June.
Okay.
So Stratford isn't going to have time to act on that information because their meeting is 2 days after the joint board meeting.
So if they have a meeting this week and then.
They have a meeting Wednesday night.
Then not for another 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, last Wednesday.
Yeah, that's fine. No, just, yeah.
They just
right.
moved it.
Oh, Brown.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's
So-
more a surprise. That's all.
But
It works
Stratford,
out that way.
Yeah.
Stratford does have a meeting on June
We have an
26th.
extra one too.
I'm sorry, when's the next joint meeting?
The 10th.
Oh,
I definitely think we should have the dates because I think we've discussed this so many times of at least cutting down the amount of meetings that we have and have the superintendent then maybe come up with a schedule that he thinks would work. I know our board came up with a schedule and we gave it to our representative.
Mhm.
And I thought that was like the main problem, was we wanted to have fewer meetings. So, you know, as far as the other part, is, you know, if some people don't want to come to meetings, but yet their board wants to be equally represented, that's something that individual boards need to decide on, and hopefully everybody is equally listened to at the.
Yeah, okay. And I think, yeah, and what we should do is get a legal, how about this, if we, Keith, you were gonna say something.
Well, I was just gonna propose, I mean, since it's, you know, the meeting dates are off, let's just plan on coming back on the 10th with the information at this level. And then that will give time for the individual boards to meet after that with all the information, and then we can decide on our August meeting.
so the
or whatever.
10th, without an expectation of a vote,
Right.
just information.
All the information that we want by the 10th, and then we vote on the.
Yeah.
Crazy
I
rush.
think
Right,
it
right,
would
there's no
be,
crazy rush,
it
'cause-
would be nice to be able to vote at the next meeting about our meeting schedule.
I agree,
Get
but,
that done.
but
Yes.
but with some boards not being able to meet before then, I don't think that's reasonable. That's all.
But that's probably not something that,
The meeting schedule is different than this proposal, because our board already discussed the meeting schedule. I thought your board, all the boards did that. We gave our representative a meeting schedule that we thought would work. So we've already discussed that. So if we want to do part one and get that set, so we can decide if we're going to meet in July, is it August we're meeting, or are we meeting in September, depending on when the budget's proposed. There's no reason not to hold off that section of it, because this is more complicated. And this could take us several meetings to decide. And then we're going to get back into the same routine about having meetings every month and nothing changes. This is what happened the last time, 2 years ago.
So
how
Paul-
about, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, look, if we get all the information back on the 10th about this, then we as a joint board can decide where to go from there.
Yeah,
And we
so-
can, the management committee can meet before then.
So we can plan, let's plan to be able to discuss a meeting schedule and see if we can make a decision on that at the next meeting. At least
Okay.
that piece is done. Get the information on 194, C7, C8, the 3 votes per, see what people think about that. And have it won't work to send everything out prior, so we will have it all for everyone to be fair at the same time at the June 10th meeting. And because of that, we won't be expected to make a decision, but you'll get it at least a week in advance. It will go out on the Monday prior. Now, would you want to have legal counsel attend the meeting to answer questions, or it's simply a report?
Like a report would be fine unless it's something really hairy that comes up, right? But
And then we could do that for the next scheduled meeting if we want. Okay, so we'll plan to have a written analysis by legal at our June 10th meeting on this idea of the 194C7 voting. And
Sue, would you be able to have either the superintendent with the management committee come up with and put in our packet a proposed schedule for meetings so that we have the schedule that the management committee with the superintendent's input
ahead of time?
So that when we've had some time to look at this, so we can think, oh yeah, we should have a meeting in January, or no, we don't need one in January.
The problem with that is that your board would need to get it Wednesday of this week in order to be able to meet in a public forum.
Our group has already done this.
So we can send that schedule out via email to all the boards, much like a meeting packet prior, and that should not be a problem.
It fizzled, but then it should have been put on an agenda.
I'm sorry?
I'm confused. You keep saying we already talked about this. I don't
No,
remember.
no.
Can I finish?
Yes.
Can that's fine. I don't understand, like, you guys had this done, but then you should have brought it to the joint board and added it to an agenda so that we could all have voted on it, because we're trying to take care of this and I'm feeling frustration coming from you.
I think you're confused. What happened was we have a management committee. We each have a representative.
I know that.
The management representative brought all this information to our board. We discussed it twice. Our management committee representative went back to the management committee and said, this is what we proposed. So our board has already discussed the schedule, did all that, and brought it back to the management committee. That's why I was saying.
So then, but why wasn't it put, I'm confused.
But I think
at our last
previous-
meeting,
separate
yes.
from this discussion, there have been
Yes.
previous joint
Right.
board discussions about reducing the schedule.
Yes, and I remember them. But
I
I
think those
do.
are two
I've been here
separate
for a year.
things. No.
I remember this starting right after the reorg, and I had no idea what was going on.
Okay. Well, actually, it was several years ago. That was a different time.
So I don't understand your time frame then, maybe.
So I think what's
You're talking
happening
about two
is
different things.
the management committee decided at its last meeting to bring the governance policy forward and have all of the people in attendance represent themselves and say what they wanted to do with it. We had several presentations at our last meeting and we could not do it justice. So we decided to bring it forward for this meeting to discuss it. And so we're having that discussion and we're deciding that what we're gonna do. We're gonna vote at our next meeting on the calendar, we're gonna get that done. Stratford did have dates, Misty did bring forward months that she thought would be good months, and we thought we would have that.
I guess I was just confused that I thought that maybe we weren't doing our job as our boards, and that was why I was getting frustrated, because you're saying we already did this, but I wanted to know if my board, wasn't doing what they needed to do to give you the information that you needed, because if I had known that, we would have had a meeting and given you that information.
Well, I think you were supposed to discuss it as a board, this whole proposal. I'm not sure why
I've
you
never-
didn't. Yeah, but you were supposed to. Let's keep making all the decisions for your board.
He
But we were
definitely
supposed-
is not.
Yeah.
All right, so,
He
So-
definitely is not.
all right, so we had, I think we've got,
Exactly.
changes can be difficult, we're gonna follow the law here. We're gonna have these open conversations, we're gonna get a legal opinion. The management committee will get together and make a recommendation in concert with the superintendent around a schedule. I think the schedule that Stratford offered up for the months is probably pretty solid. And if we started in April and did our reorg there and just skipped every other month, the other piece of this is that the audit committee will need to work with the auditors. If we can get our audits done sooner, then your budget cycles can start sooner, and we could meet in August and look at a first very preliminary draft, and then look at it again in October, and then come December, you'd be ready to vote. So these are all the things, and if you look at that BBBHR that I sent out, it sort of lists what the joint board is responsible for, and the joint board is really responsible for the SAU level, and the districts are wholly responsible for what goes on locally. So the only piece that would really intersect is what you decide locally and then here that you want to move and centralize to the SAU from your local districts. But for the most part, you're looking at that list of 4 items, which pretty much discusses what an SAU board would do. So, so just to recap, is everyone clear what we'll do at the next meeting? The joint board the management committee will get together and...
Well, before you got derailed, you did start talking about what was the board's directive to the management committee, and I'd really like some actual clarification on that to make sure that we're
So
all
if we
on
can
the
get a
same
punch
page.
list from the group about what you would like to see the management committee coordinate for the June meeting, that would be great.
Right.
And Mr. Winslow had started with an analysis from the superintendent of a calendar.
Yeah,
The legal-
also, a legal opinion on this governance policy proposal that we're talking about this evening. And then specifically, I have a question regarding dissemination of information for the joint board, if it is a 3-member board or whatever, if that could be legally allowed to happen through email. So that way, I believe that would offset some of the hiccup that's going to come out from giving materials to individual boards. So those are my 3 requests.
So some preliminary information other than a joint board packet, explanatory in nature or something. I'm just trying to clarify that last ask about the right to know and emails.
Yeah, the last ask is the SAU shall provide an agenda and any supporting documents to district boards at the district board meeting prior to the joint board meeting, if that could be through email rather than at a district board meeting. That's just a question.
Okay, so instead of bringing it to a district board, it would be like a packet prepared early enough to get to all of the boards. So basically, we're moving the joint board packet
Right.
in front of the
Right, that's
individual
the
meetings.
proposal.
And it would have to just get done a lot sooner. So we would basically almost have a meeting. They would instruct me what they'd like to have on the agenda. You and I would get together within the next couple of days and turn it around.
Mhm.
But the only problem may come in providing backup documentation in that fast turn.
Exactly.
But we can talk about that in the procedural items.
So does the board still want the management committee to move forward with this and with looking at changes to the calendar? Is that what our directive is as a management committee? I just wanted the board to get a clarification on that from the board.
If this is C7,
Yes.
I would like to see that, and the list, absolutely. I think C8 would be problematic, but that's just me.
And it exists anyway.
Right. Can always be brought if I had to, but.
And if we're going to have the list of the months that the meetings will be scheduled, if you could have that in the packet before our
Yes, we'll send
meeting.
that out before the packet. Okay.
Is that
All
yes?
right.
Yes.
Okay. Just curious.
Is, are the boards supposed to have a discussion about this beforehand, between now and the June meeting, or are we just coming to this?
I think what we
I think you're
agreed
not gonna
was
be able to.
we will not be able to get it to the boards, the information, the legal information. We won't be able to get to all the boards, so it would be unfair
Okay,
to get it to those that we could and not all.
got it.
So I assume the local boards can discuss what they wish, but they will be without the benefit of the legal analysis
Okay.
that will come at the joint meeting.
Can't stop you from talking
So, how do we feel? We good to move on from this, and we're gonna, okay?
So I have a question, legal opinion?
Yes.
I'm probably gonna get that before the management team meets.
Yep.
Can I provide the legal opinion to the management committee? That's up to the board.
So,
That's up to this
we're
board.
gonna have Mr. Rooney go and get the legal opinion on this whole piece. And are you okay with the legal opinion going to the management committee to work on, with the understanding that you're gonna get all the raw information as well? It won't just be analyzed and synthesized and summarized, and then you won't see the original, you'll see it all.
Will this be in writing, the legal opinion?
Yes.
So we'll see the written.
Yeah, you're gonna get it in your non-public packet.
Okay, perfect.
But with any legal opinion, I need the board's permission if I'm gonna release it even to a subcommittee of the board before.
Do you need a motion for that?
That
Would
would
be
be
best.
nice.
I'll make a motion to authorize Mr. Green to release the legal opinion he obtained about the governance policy to the management committee prior to our next meeting.
Second.
Any discussion?
So, any discussion, thoughts?
Yes, so then, and then following that, the written legal opinion will be dispersed to each individual board member.
Right, as part of your joint board packet.
Okay, thank you.
In a
So you'll have an
separate, it'll be
I
in a
just wanna see it
non-public, it'll be in a
myself.
non-public.
But just the
envelope.
management committee would see it earlier than
Right.
an
Correct,
individual.
that's all we're saying.
To use it in the process
Yeah,
of
no, I
trying
understand,
Right.
I was just double checking.
Right.
Okay, so are we okay right now with governance policy and how we're going to move forward and what we're going to do in June? Okay. Excellent.
Do we need to vote on that?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. We have the motion out there to, I'm sorry. Motion and the second on allowing the legal opinion to go to the management subcommittee. So all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right, so that motion carries unanimously with 12 in favor.
So at
Yes.
this point, this
Oh,
would be the
sorry.
point at which you said, there are 3 people from Nottingham, you have 1/3, each one of you has 1 vote. There are 4 people from,
sorry.
and so each one of you has. Okay.
So like if there were 5, you get 0.6 to add up to 3.
Get the calculator out.
Yeah, so we
But
would,
you need
Yeah, but you know, most of the
those
times it's gonna be
charts.
like, you know, you vote and it's just gonna say passes or not passes, because it's gonna be pretty obvious, right? You don't need to actually do the math on everything on, at the
Oh,
table, you
I
know?
might have to disagree on that.
I mean, you can do
Right.
it.
She really likes math.
That's fine.
so we'll have to think about all the procedures and everything and what it means. But it was an interesting conversation that I did have with Mr. Phillip today. He was helpful, and I think the policy is helpful.
I'd just like to suggest, if we're gonna have one individual board member write something up like this, I think that the committee should be involved in this before it's presented to the board, because this
Well, I just
really,
did this myself. I can bring
So
this
it
to the
really
board and
wasn't from,
present it
yeah.
all I want. Everyone
right,
can.
yeah, I
Right.
guess as long as it's on the agenda, right?
So
Debbie,
Well,
just so
it
you know,
didn't, it didn't follow through management.
Yeah, I know that, the one that was in our packet.
You weren't here when we started the discussion. I just want you to feel comfortable knowing that he didn't present this as something coming from the management committee. He made it very clear that he pulled this up for himself. I just want you to feel
Yeah.
comfortable on that.
All right, so, okay, so we're gonna have a good, we'll get some legal opinions and we'll figure out how it looks and what it works like. And, you know, he did say that this is the way it works, and I told him, you know, for decades, our SAU's been doing it, hey, we got
Right.
15 members, 8's a quorum, and that's how we vote. He said, yeah, and you and a ton of other people, but this other law came into play, as I said earlier, to help with big districts. He mentioned one over on the coast that has 5 towns, and they range from 7
Oh,
members
that's Greenland
to
and Portsmouth
3.
and Newcastle.
No, it was another one.
It's SAU 21.
21, yeah.
Hampton?
They range from 7
Hampton,
members to 3
Southampton,
members, so the
Hampton
3-member
Falls,
boards are,
Seabrook, Northampton,
you know.
Winnicott Cooperative.
Yeah, I used to.
so anyway. So now, running into item 10, if we're all good to move forward. Review and update of goals. Now again, the management committee did look at the goals at our last meeting, and they decided to bring forward the goals that were in place. And I believe the discussion, and Keith, keep me honest, because it's just you and me here tonight. We talked about it and said we think that the goals should be strictly aligned to SAU business and not reach into the local. We should have as few as possible, that, you know, meaningful, but what have you. And we also would leave it for you folks to kind of parse out what you think is important, give us feedback, we take it back to a meeting, and then come back in June. We think it would be nice, with June being the end of the year, the fiscal year, if you could approve goals in June, then starting July 1, you've got your goals, and that would be nice. So that isn't.
So one of the just addition, I know that brought up a number of times the management committee too, is like, you know, if these goals are really just for the local running of the SAU kindergarten,
Yes.
preschool, another part of these goals would be to follow the goals of the district as well. That'd kind of be like a sub-goal, right? It'd be to follow the goals of the individual districts, and then it'd be up to the individual districts to do the meatier stuff probably with the, that more academics and
Yeah, what
all
are
the
you
stuff we have
expecting?
here.
How are you measuring data? What are
Right.
you doing with your scores? All of that.
Right, so the services provided to the districts would likely be a goal, to follow the district's goals
Yeah.
as well.
And I think we talked about some of these being kind of ongoing. Mr. Rooney was involved in the conversation with us. He felt like some of them had been attained, some of them were ongoing. So I don't
It
know.
reads very much like a job description. It really doesn't read like goals.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a job description.
Well, it's funny because there is an actual statute-driven job description out there as well. So some of these do pluck right out of like what that statute says, like around advising around policy and so forth.
Right. That shouldn't be a goal if it's.
So those things could be cleaned up because it's statute-driven. I think under academic success, I'm wondering what that is pretty much the driver. I would think people would concur. I don't know. Do you want it to add any bullet points there or remove any or?
I almost think the first bullet point is the important one there. Because the other academic stuff, unless we're talking
But
about
again,
the
it's a job
preschool.
description. It's not really a goal.
Well, right, but if we try to pare it down into goals, right?
We can do it into statements.
Right.
Yeah.
So you basically would say something like meeting or exceeding or needs improvement type of a thing next to each statement, next to each bullet point.
Of the measurement criteria?
Right, because, you're either meeting it, you're exceeding it, or you need to work on it.
So we could add measurement criteria in conjunction.
Well, the second one is pretty. That's measurable.
Yeah.
A goal to have that information before the budget planning season.
Yep, so make them into
Just tell
SMART
if that
goals that are
happens.
measurable and attainable. But with
It almost
these,
seems like it could be pushed down to the individual district though too. Right, 'cause that's,
I wasn't even putting on that filter, but I think it would be very hard for us to measure if Mr. Rooney is working towards continually improving something.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
right.
squishy
Right.
and
Every
not
day.
really a good use of time, I would think, to discuss that.
Also, I think you originally said that the direction should be that the goals should be strictly for the SAU.
Right.
So I feel like all of the academic goals are really local goals.
other than,
Other than the
preschool and the continuing, the alternate program, right? Those should be the academic goals, I think.
Well, they do, the superintendent does oversee our principals, and he is working with our principals to
But is that a joint
encourage
thing?
all
Right,
these
but
things.
that's
That's
my
not a
relationship
joint
with your
board.
individual district. Right.
Okay.
It is confusing. It is
So-
multi-layered and confusing. I'm with you.
I think there needs to be an understanding, I think the goals need to be directly tied to the review as well, and so that when we come to review time, it's more clear. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that means we revamp the review tool, or if you look at the review tool when you're developing the goals, or
we have
or
had
what,
some,
but I feel
a
like
lot
they're
of,
not related right now.
we might try to do something like that to get the tool tuned up to the,
If you're looking at goals and they're measurable, we should be able to then just look and see where we are on that scale of measurement and make a review based on
yeah,
that
because
information.
I do think that the superintendent is the academic leader of the, the achievement is job one, right? I
He's the
think.
chief academic officer.
So, I mean, that is something that if we are, as this board is going ahead and developing the evaluation, obviously that's something we would evaluate, so.
So that makes it difficult then to take that at a board level as opposed to doing it at an SAU level, because if everyone is evaluating on something different, but we're giving one evaluation, that's gonna be confusing.
So could you just
So
maybe
I'm not sure how to.
change the wording so that it actually is a goal that can be measured? I mean, I think all the information here is good. You just need to reword it.
I think we can probably work on that with some input and see what we come up with, and when we get back here in June, we will have a fairly light agenda so that we can discuss primarily just sink into these goals, talk about them, reword them, and be in a position to move forward with them for the coming year so that we are in front of it and we have it in place as the year starts. I don't know if there are other headings that you wish to have. You do have your management committee members at your local meetings, so if there are other areas you'd like to add or have considered, you could express it on Wednesday or Thursday of this week to those members who can bring that information back, and we can make it a point not to meet until after those local meetings have been handled. Kelly, did you have something? I'm sorry.
No, I mean I did, but then you talked about it, so it's no longer relevant.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So is there anything else here that's a great idea that someone would like to put out there to have?
So I just want to echo what Christine said. I think when we start to think about our evaluation, I think step one maybe should be get the goals in the way that we want them, right? And at that point, we should, as step two, take a look at the evaluation tool and make that align with the goal layout rather than the way it is now. But that's down the road, perhaps a little bit, right? I think getting the goals right first needs to be done before that.
I agree that the goals should be measurable, and we should confirm them as soon as possible, June, so that they can start, and that the evaluation tool could come later. However, I feel like if you look at the evaluation tool while doing this, it may just give you some ideas of something you may not have thought of. You know,
I think they'll align better than we think they will when these are measurable. I think we'll be able to tuck these into a lot of the spaces. There might be more on the tool than what we actually need, but I think a lot of this stuff is addressed on there, just not in these words.
And I know that it's, within each subheading, there's probably something here about communication, or in several of them, but I think communication is so important that I don't know if that needs to be a separate one or not. I know that
streamline some of the others.
Yeah, I
to
think in the
pull it out.
goals, in the tool, communication may be a heading. Does anybody remember that?
Tonight I did not bring my little library of everything. I said, I
haven't used it in 2
have
months.
some faith. I do look at it, but I was like, have some faith in yourself, So I don't have a pile of reference over here.
I think that may be a
In the
heading.
family and community engagement.
Okay, is that what it was?
I wrote a question mark down.
Okay.
If we go through it.
communication is a good
Right.
All right. Is there anything else there? Okay. All righty.
Thank you for all of the stuff that you
Right.
guys do outside of the
I
meetings.
know, that's so much
We
fun.
appreciate it.
I think we're having good conversations, and you guys, you're moving along, you're having conversations, and you're tracking ahead. It's 7:28.
Wow.
We're about to have a lot of policies though.
So I allotted 20 minutes for policies in deference to the fact that they seem to be a quagmire. So we have an extra 5 minutes for it.
Do you want me to take that?
Here we go.
I think at this point, all the boards and your local boards potentially have seen all these policies. These are the policies. How many times have they said this? These are the policies that support your grant assurances. And then there's one second reading. It had gotten tabled last time we did a first reading. And we just added it and see if we can get it adopted. So the only real sort of challenges here is GJC petty cash accounts. We do want to change that. I have to find the page. $67. We do want to change that will to may because we're trying to get rid of petty cash.
That first will,
Yeah.
cash fund may be established?
Yeah. I would expect 67. I would expect some modifications to that going forward. For instance, we know that if we look at all 4 entities, 50% of them have petty cash, 50% of them don't. And is there really a need for petty cash? Or is that just a liability or an area of risk?
How is it handled when there's not petty cash?
By receipts. So if we need something
Oh, I see.
You know,
It's
some
turning
cleaning
receipt and
supplies
you're
just turn and
reimbursed.
receipt, you're reimbursed. It's-
Can I make a request that to the chair that we just go through these one by one?
Yeah.
In order, or in order by priority even might make more sense.
Yeah.
And then that we can address them as we come up. And
Going back to page
Yes.
36, I believe.
38.
39. So they're all first reading. How about if we do the second reading on JRA student records, since we've already done that and looked at it, and see how we feel about that second reading? 'Cause I think those are the ones that take longer.
What page is it?
It's at the very end.
73.
Thank you, Christine. Guys, I'm going back and forth with names tonight too. It's easier just to, you end up forgetting people's names when you're trying to be super formal, so I apologize for that.
72.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to move policy JRA, student records and access, to adopt policy JRA.
Second. Who was the second on that? I apologize. Amelia, do you have them?
Yes.
Ryan? Okay, are there any discussion points on this, or, yes?
On page 73,
Yeah.
we just need to fill in the blank, either 3 or 4 weeks, I would say 4 weeks.
And same at the top of the page, and then will be given until, oh, that's a date that shifts every
Halfway
year,
down,
or
in the middle of the page on the right.
very top of page 73.
First sentence, until,
Is that a date that moves every year because you're going to put in a specific calendar date, or is it going to be like the second Wednesday?
No, let's just do the,
Right, you want to update it every year.
right, I don't want to update it every year, so
No, I get it.
let's do by September 30th.
September 30th?
Yeah.
So that's
Of
we're at
each
the
year,
top of
should
page
say
73?
September 30th of each school year, to be super clear. Since we're not putting an actual year.
Because that'll give them time after their handbooks come out, because that's where your statements are printed.
Yeah, because usually those handbooks are out, I mean,
Well,
that's
we
out
try to
in the
bring them
first
to you
week.
for approval in August, right?
Yeah. But when they go to the, isn't this like when it goes to the parents, Mrs.
Yeah, it
Parents?
usually goes to
They'll
the
get
first.
that stuff the first week of school.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? All right, not hearing anything, we'll move to a vote, did I? Okay.
And
So we can-
the annual notification of the rights of parents and eligible students, did you say that's within the first 4 weeks?
That's usually on the first day your handbook goes home with that in it.
But we're putting a
No,
4 in
we
that
need to
sentence.
write
Yeah.
something.
Yes, where that blank
Yeah,
is.
I put 4 weeks.
Thank you.
Okay. So, hearing no further discussion, we'll move to vote for those in favor of moving this to final adoption. All right, looks like we have a unanimous vote. I'm just going to double check. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? So that motion carries. 12 in favor. And now we'll just move back up to these first readings. So these will all go to first reading and then they'll become, moving to adoption come June. I would just like to ask the board, we have our business administrator and our special services director. If you have no further questions for them, would you feel comfortable if they were to leave the meeting at this time?
I have one question.
Okay.
I know that there wasn't a special ed report this month, but I was wondering if for our June meeting, if we'd be able to get a breakdown for the number of special ed students in each district. Okay, thank you. And if you wanted to do it by high school, elementary, but preschool, that'd be perfect. If you can do that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
The board is good with that request?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right then. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. Good to see you.
All right, so back now to the first readings.
And DIR?
back to 39.
So the first one up is DAF, Administration of Federal Grant Funds.
I think it's DAR on mine.
DAR.
Oh, I'm
It
looking
is,
at
it's a
the,
typo.
sorry, I'm looking at the index. I
Which one is
apologize.
Typo on the index.
DAR,
Yeah.
Page 39.
39.
Yep.
Okay, I have a question. I'm a little confused because we keep talking about districts in this policy, and is this for the districts, individual districts, or is
No.
it the SAU?
This is for the SAU.
So should we change district? Because when I see district, I think it's the Stratford
Individual.
district or the Northwood district or Nottingham. So if it's the SAU, managed to be used by the SAU in the administration, I don't know. It's not a district.
I think for some legal entities, it might be a district.
Right, yeah.
Where are you seeing the, like paragraph
Like you
2?
said,
It's
Yeah.
throughout the
Paragraph
whole,
one,
the
paragraph
whole
two,
paragraph.
or-
I mean, the whole policy has district, and it's confusing because I didn't know if this was written for individual districts, because if so, then it should go to the individual districts. But if it's for the SAU, then we need to clarify.
There's no reason that we couldn't just put SAU in there instead of district.
Yeah, well, I suspect the SAU is considered a district, though.
It is
It
for
is.
some legal purposes,
Right.
it is.
And this
I'm
is,
confused
you know,
about
just
that.
to-
I
I mean,
don't know
just to
that
clarify.
if you're
Like, there's no
considered a
reason we
district.
couldn't put SAU in there.
I agree. I think that it would be just replace district with SAU, and that just differentiates it from the local policies and.
Right, and you all have this local policy
Okay,
already too.
yeah, right. So
right now.
So it would make no sense to have it.
And this kind of makes it clear for the auditors too, what
Right.
we're talking about here, and we got the SAU covered. So is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
All right. Is there anything else on this DAR policy?
There's just a lot of districts you're gonna have to go through.
I just wrote substitute SAU for district
Search and
throughout.
replace.
So we'll just
Right.
search,
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be done.
It's not a big.
It'll be really
Under
fast.
40, on page 47, there is a blank, under procurement, third paragraph.
It's
In the
DJ,
entire set.
it's DJ.
Okay.
You have DJ.
I just have a question, and it's not a suggestion, just in my own understanding. The policy's DAR, but then we have DAF-1, DAF-2, and on page 47 where we just word DAF-3. What is, do we know why that's happening? I'm confused.
where are you looking?
So the policy on page 39 is policy number DAR, but then where we just were on page 47, it says DAF-3. So
Maybe it's- you have one, yeah, it's all over there.
I think that
That would be.
that typo must have just continued throughout a little bit.
I would say this is
Yeah.
probably a typo from the School Boards Association, so
I think the policy.
The policy might be DAF, yeah.
it might be DAF.
Okay, so it
It
is.
is DAF.
Okay. So
So there's just that one typo.
Yeah.
So the index is.
That's what we're going with.
All right.
Right, because then it talks about DF, one, sub 1, sub 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which then makes it, that makes it
It is some sort of taxonomy of letters, right? What means what for policies?
Yeah.
Even the last letter, right?
No.
No,
Yeah,
just
The
the first
first,
one?
yeah,
Okay.
right. It's the, it's the American School Boards Association. What do I call it? Genotype, I'm thinking
Right,
biology.
right, yeah.
But, and then it flows through to New Hampshire. And then you have, yeah, we try to keep it standard. But then you might have local policies, like you might have a DFA. You've added a policy to support it.
There's no real inherent meaning in the second and third letters of the policy, is what you're saying?
Not that I'm aware of, but I could look into that if I have time.
No, don't worry about it. I can look into it too.
Yeah, right. They could just type in American School Boards Association.
But I suspect all across New Hampshire, all the DAFs are D.
Right, the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we know that, you
Right.
got governance, you got fiscal, you got student, you got instruction, you got, those are all uniform, hopefully. Although I did find one that wasn't recently.
I'll make a motion, we move policy DAF to second reading as amended.
I second that.
So we have Christine and Kathy.
The policy for me.
The longest policy you've ever seen.
All right. All those in favor?
With amendments.
Yep.
Yep, with the
Change.
amendments.
Agreed.
So, anybody opposed or abstaining? It's just a quicker way for me to not have to count 12 every time. All right, so we have a unanimous vote in favor.
12:16.
Yep. 0.60.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is DI, fiscal accounting and reporting for first reading.
64.
Thank you.
Make a motion to move policy DI, fiscal accounting and reporting to second reading.
Second?
And the same thing around SAU
Yeah,
districts.
this again has, like the second paragraph, it says showing the financial condition of the school district. Yeah,
I got it.
where's the first paragraph? Oh, yeah, the districts.
Maybe we could just stipulate throughout that district will be referred to in the future as SAU, and those changes will be made.
Right, well, also, the school board, the board shall receive financial reports monthly.
Mhm.
Who started the map?
Me.
Okay, monthly.
Or, well, wait, hold on, you're talking about modifying your meeting schedule.
Yeah.
Right.
How about at its,
At a regularly scheduled meetings, or,
yes,
Does that mean
yes, yes, yes.
Does that mean that you have to have it at every meeting though? Like what if you don't have it because somebody's
Well,
sick for a
regularly
while?
scheduled.
You know, or,
Well, if you schedule 8 meetings, you're gonna get 8 cents of financials unless somebody's sick. So if you put in at regularly scheduled meetings, that covers you. Because if you need to call a meeting, that's a special meeting.
and we can always stipulate that we can overwrite a policy and say we won't require a
Right.
financial report.
And so it should probably say the joint board may ask for,
I think any board, and I don't know if you need to do that.
Do you have anything else on DI? Okay, we'll go ahead. All those in favor of moving this to second reading? It looks unanimous. Anyone abstaining or opposed? Okay, so that carries unanimously with a vote of 12 in favor.
Make a
Next up,
motion to move policy DID, fixed assets, to second reading.
Second?
So are we doing that? Policy DID, do we have inventories of everything we have?
Well, we're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
We have inventories of furniture, admin equipment, educational equipment, vehicles that are non-applicable, textbooks and supplementary books. This is a gap policy. Your audit committee, your auditors are providing your audit committee with model policies to update this. However, if I wait for that, we're gonna get held up on your grant assurances. So this is like a fill the gap until, right, didn't I email sample policies from Mike and, did we have a long conversation about inventories and overlay?
we did in Nottingham, the difference between an inventory and a fixed asset,
Right.
Yeah.
muddling them together, and yes,
Yeah. So,
they are different.
So, we do, though, have an inventory, I'm just asking, do we have an inventory of all the things we own, the furniture and all the,
you might not have like all the furniture inventories, but you definitely have all your equipment inventories, your computer inventories, your
right?
software inventories, all those things.
So do we need to take vehicle out of this policy if we don't have them, or can they
Well,
stay
I
in
mean, there may, you can take it out.
Zero.
Yeah.
This is the inventory, right?
So it's fine.
yeah.
And we don't have buildings either, we don't own a
Yeah,
building.
but then we'd have to
I got it.
rewrite the policy, assuming it wasn't a gap policy, if something happened and we did buy, or we
Right.
did get a district-owned van to work with
So we
the
want it in
alt-ed
there.
kids or something.
So if we can leave it in, and if there are none, there
There's
aren't.
inventory zero. and I
There
think
would be a
there's-
procedure manual that would be developed behind a policy, and I think that would stipulate the definition of a fixed asset in terms of value and the time period that it would be in service, because that definitely is what defines them. So it wouldn't be all furniture, it would be furniture with a life longer than 5 years and a value more than I don't know,
$100.
whatever your
It's
threshold
$100
is.
is the threshold.
And the auditors would typically recommend a threshold value of
Yeah.
5,000 or 1,000
Right.
and a useful life of 5 years or
Well, because
something.
if there was a fire and you lost everything, we'd need to know what was the value
Mhm.
of what we lost.
Right, 'cause
Absolutely.
I guess I have a question too. Do we have, with all of our laptops and any other iPads and all those things, do we have an actual
Asset tag?
asset tag on them? We do,
On
good,
everything.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
We had a problem at one point with missing iPods.
That's a frequent
iPads.
problem across
Yeah.
school districts.
Yeah.
We have everything asset tagged as soon as it comes in.
Is there a separate, I mean, would that be an asset technology that should be included here?
Equipment,
Educational
graphic-
equipment and
graphic equipment, okay.
administrative
yep,
equipment. both of them.
administrative equipment, educational equipment.
Where is the list of the asset tags? Like, where is that kept? Do we have hard copies?
Charlene has
Okay.
the asset tags and the sign-outs that you take when you take something or when it's issued to a student.
And it's also protected somewhere on the computer so that if we had a fire, we would be able to pull it up.
It's also stored in a lot of your equipment at the SAU, when it comes to student equipment and things like that, is like grant purchase, so it's stored in the grant system.
Okay.
It's all stored there, because they check it when they audit, so we put it in every year.
But for equipment that is not covered by grants or contract grants, there's something in the computer.
There's something in place, but it will get better. Your new software system has a component called Asset Tracker, so now when a piece of equipment comes in across your districts in SAU, when that's put in, then it's clicked whether it's an asset or not, and it's coded. So I'm not going to say that everything's working perfectly here. I think we know that it isn't all the time. But moving forward, that'll be an improvement where everything is tracked by your district much more frequently. And you've also got inventories within your building, so those will be stored in the system too. So
I mean, they're more brick and mortar buildings, and this is not. So you would think we'd have more of a chance of having a fire of losing things. Yeah.
Keith, did you have something?
So I'll just move forward with policy. I mean, if we're doing policies, let's do policies. If we do business, it's different.
Okay, so we're on the fixed assets. So anything else on that one? All right, not hearing any further discussion, we'll move this one to a vote. All those in favor? Okay, that looks like it's unanimous. Anyone opposed or abstaining? All right, that motion also carries unanimously. We'll move that forward to second reading. Next up is DJ, purchasing.
I'd like to move policy DJ purchasing to second reading.
Second.
Really, do you have the, okay. So this one we just did in Nottingham. We made a couple of changes to it. And I'm wondering if there are somewhat subtle changes at the local district that this one shouldn't, again, be specific to somehow in here pointing to the SAU. So these would be related to the educational purchases at the preschool and the SAU. Because it's talking about centralizing, I think each of the districts has a policy now about that. And we did make a change, remember we talked about the beyond budget limitations, that's typically a board.
yeah, we took that out.
That's a board function, and we didn't, in Nottingham, we wanted to ensure that we didn't have over budget limit purchases that the board didn't see.
So what was the change?
I'm asking if we shouldn't delineate this a little bit more to be specific, somewhere in here, just some sentence that it relates to SAU purchases. Because we all have our own local policies that may or may not be changed. And I would again ask that we follow the budget law that's out there that indicates that we don't overspend budget limitations, that would have to be a board approval.
So that third paragraph, the business administrator will solely be responsible for the final approval of all non-educational purchases that have been approved by the board, right?
I think we took that out in ours, right?
Yeah,
Did we
that
strike that whole
seems-
paragraph?
Yeah.
We were worried about and locally, we were concerned about the local administration being able to make some local decisions, and then also we didn't want budget overruns without the board being involved in it, but.
So maybe we don't want that third paragraph, because that we don't want the second sentence. The first sentence, the BA, that's incomplete, because he is not solely responsible. It is with approval of the board. It's board approval. Like, we have to say, you have this much money, you've just asked us for computers.
Right, but he's talking
such
about,
and
he's
such.
talking about purchasing,
Okay.
right? So let's say, for instance, that Stratford
Right.
has $2,000 for toilet paper or paper products. So the office in Stratford files that requisition request. It's printed as a PO, the business administrator signs it, and then it goes out for processing. They're not talking about over budget expenditures, they're talking about day-to-day expenditures.
Okay.
So he is responsible
For the
for
processing
having that phase
of all
in the system.
non-educational purposes, is that,
Yeah.
is that,
One thing I'm wondering about, and maybe I'm being too simplistic, but if the local boards have policy DJ, and policy DJ has been amended at the local level in a directive manner to how that district is handling purchasing, shouldn't this policy just point back to those local policies?
Well, I would think this policy would be under for purchases that happen for this office, for the
Yes.
preschool.
Yeah.
For
So
the
let's
Alt-Ed, you know.
clarify that, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
confused, either this is pointing back to the local
so in
districts, talking
the
about what
very first
happens
sentence, would we say for the SAU?
for the acquisition of supplies, equipment, services,
And services for the SAU will be centralized?
So Kelly just asked if we could title it SAU purchasing.
Yes.
And
There you
that-
go.
We can
that
do
kinda
whatever we
makes
want.
sense.
Thank you, Kelly, that's an awesome solution.
And then strike paragraph 3. Because it really is covered in paragraph 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So are we, I didn't hear that.
Because that is more clear, because
we-
it says all phases of purchasing in accordance with board policy.
Great.
So we just strike paragraph 3. Put for the SAU after services. Put SAU purchasing and DJ.
I don't think I did.
Excellent. Everyone good with that? All right, all those in favor of
We did one
policy,
recently, I think it was this one.
policy DJ as amended? Again, I think we have a unanimous, anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay, then that carries with 12. Okay, next up is petty cash, DJC.
I just said,
Oh,
we'd like to
Yeah.
change will to may.
I'd like to
because-
move policy DJC petty cash accounts to second reading.
Okay, second.
That's Brian and Debbie. Yes, Debbie?
Okay, so why do we have for all school buildings, I'm confused,
You can
because
take
that
that
would
out.
be, we have our own individual, I thought we were supposed to have.
So a petty cash fund may be established for the
The
SAU?
SAU.
Everyone good with that? Okay. Any other changes? Hearing none, all those in
Wait, wait,
favor,
wait, wait.
okay.
And
Okay,
actually,
in
you've got
cases
to-
of
Last
emergency, the
sentence,
building
yeah.
principal.
well, would just be the business administrator.
Okay. Well, the business administrator with prior approval of the business administrator, or you just say, we're gonna get rid
In
of that
cases
I would
phrase?
say
of
in case
emergencies,
of-
the business administrator may exceed the established,
Okay.
after a good talking to himself.
Oh, he'll come see me.
Do you want to have some oversight to that, or?
We're trying to get rid of petty cash here.
Okay,
There's
so-
no need for
yeah,
it.
good.
If we need furniture polished, I can go buy it and get reimbursed.
Just get in trouble.
Well, in the world of Amazon and debit cards, it's a little.
Exactly, right, well, that's what we're talking,
mode.
that's what Mr. O'Sullivan and I have been talking about in all the districts is, we're in a different age now, so.
And your auditors will, they have issues with that, though.
I have issues with
Well,
petty
with
cash.
petty cash, but also with purchasing cards,
Yeah.
they get worried
Oh,
about those too,
do
so
they ever?
you're kinda doomed.
Yeah.
So, all right, are we good now with DJC? Feeling good?
Yes.
Did you have something?
Nope.
That was a vote, right?
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor of moving forward as amended? Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries unanimously with 12 in favor. Moving on to local purchasing.
I'd like to move policy DJF, local purchasing, as second reading.
Second.
And I've already changed district to SAU.
Any other recommended changes to DJF? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving DJF to second? Okay, anyone abstaining or opposed? Okay, that motion carries with 12 unanimously to second reading. Payment procedures, DK.
I'd like to move policy DK, payment procedures, to second reading.
Second?
Excuse me? You don't sign anything. No, I do.
So,
Comment?
Yeah,
You
I
don't
don't-
sign manifests.
Good.
Sorry.
Nope, good.
No, I was just gonna say, we don't sign manifests on the individual level.
So that's an audit note, a management letter, and they're saying that the treasurer legally has no authority to sign a check without school board approval. And this is what Northwood, we've all run into it, and everyone's resolved it in a different way. Some of us are letting payroll move, but it's always going to be an audit governance letter item because it is not in accordance with statute.
So do you happen to know what the statute?
The statute says,
By order of the school board.
by order of the school board,
So that could be.
but what you can do is have two members of a school board designated
Right.
to represent the board and sign. So they would have to come in and approve, sign the manifest and approve it, and then the treasurer could cut the check.
I think something like that would make more sense than saying a majority of the school board, because that's going to be kind of hard to get a majority of the signings. We have a hard enough time at the local level getting a
We'd have to put a
two.
procedure in place too, because it has not been being done.
Right.
And Debbie's been good about bringing the manifest and circulating them, which is a new thing, to have them circulated, so at least aware, but we're not signing ahead of time.
Right.
Which kind of leaves you hanging,
I know.
signing.
Well, people have to be available
Well,
when they're
another-
ready, yeah.
There's another piece too. I mean, I certainly could figure out a way to get two board signatures. There's always a meeting,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
But before we do that, I want to go talk to Charlene and
Right.
find out what's done in the past, what potential pitfalls are going to be created. Are we going to have a double manifest run in the same week then? I got to work through that, right? Does that make sense?
Do you want to move this to the second reading, subject to procedural, or do you want to wait?
Oh, I don't want to wait.
So
Because your
move it
grant
to second
assurance has
reading,
gotta be
subject
fine.
to the procedural investigation or what have you.
This is one of the ones we need for the grant.
Yeah. See, what happens is Charlene, it's every 2 weeks, she has the manifest created, and it has to be signed before Friday, because she sends all the bills out, otherwise bills are late, and we are charged fees. So normally, it's like a Wednesday or a Thursday that the manifest is ready and the checks are ready to be signed. So I review them and ask questions and then sign them. But that would mean we'd have to have somebody else, or Charlene would have to do it several days earlier, which I don't know if she could do that. It's a lot of work for her. So we'd have to maybe have other board members meet me here or come in first.
Just one other random board member from the joint board, or two more in addition to you?
Sounds like there's two
I
other
don't
board
think as a
members.
treasurer you should be signing.
No.
I think that would be.
No, okay, so
Right,
then
yeah,
two other people.
I knew you'd agree.
Right, but I
You-
still would,
you-
I
you need-
wouldn't sign unless I looked at the manifest.
Right, but I'm saying, I don't think you could be the board member that signs off in the manifest and orders yourself to
Oh,
sign.
no,
it.
no, we need two other board
different
members.
Yeah.
I would review the manifest too, but you'd have to appoint maybe someone from your boards to say, okay, when the manifest is ready, you have to come in here, Charlene will leave it at the front desk. You have to sit down and review it, look at all the bills, and sign off on it. There's a signature spot.
Similar to how we've done on
Just how you do
times
your
when you
local
haven't
board.
had it
Right.
at our local meeting and
But
we've come
it's-
here to sign.
But it's a
A
little bit
similar
more.
process.
It's a similar process. It's a little bit more complicated because you want to look at it closely. There's things like mileage. course reimbursements, workshop reimbursements, okay. Yeah, so you wanna really
But
look
it's the same
through
process
everything.
of looking through and signing off at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
How about this? If we move this to second reading, it's subject to a procedure being presented at the next meeting as to how that would happen. And I seem to remember discussing this in Nottingham in that second sentence, there being a conversation where it didn't necessarily tie, it just said the district's treasurer will sign all checks that will be mailed. It didn't subject the treasurer to, remember that conversation?
Yep.
I don't remember what language we used, but maybe we can come back with
So
it.
if we're just making it go to second reading,
We can
bring the
adjust.
language back.
Right.
But we do wanna change district to the SAU treasurer.
Yeah, I got that.
Right.
So we can move it forward, but we know on DK we're gonna have.
Yeah, and it may be, Mrs. Henderson, maybe something simple as, we know we run SAU in another district in the same week.
Right.
So that means that that manifest is going to the other district. We could bring the SAU manifest to that district and get 2 signatures.
Okay.
I just don't know which one.
Okay. I just think that it would be good if the people who volunteer to do this on a regular basis had the time to come into the SAU to really look through,
Yep.
take your time to go through it. So like, think about it, you have like an hour, 45 minutes, half an hour, just to come in once every 2 weeks to look through it.
Okay. So we have our motion and our second. So all those in favor of moving DK forward, subject to the stipulations we just discussed? All right, looks like unanimous again. Anyone opposed or abstaining? So that motion carries unanimously with 12 in favor.
For the next policy, before we move it, I had actually printed Northwood's policy and left it on my printer, so I apologize, but I prefer Northwood's version of this policy. Yeah, because this policy is written for students, but then there's a paragraph at the bottom that talks about community members, and I feel like Northwood's version of this policy is just, it covers community members, staff members, and students, and it's just a little more clear. So I don't know if we can have a version of that to look at in our next packet, or people want to, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and rewrite these pieces, there's a policy out there that I think covers it.
Can we table it?
Yep, would the board like to table this one and
Yeah.
compare both of them?
Do you need this for the assurances?
Yes.
Okay.
Would it be possible for us to move on to the rest of our agenda and you can print some copies of Northwood's?
No.
Would it be possible to move this to second reading and then bring back those?
What you could do is move it, and then I can bring back the other policy.
And then second reading, you decide.
I wonder if that's a little misrepresentative of, if we could bring it out there
You
for the
can
public
table
to
it, but
say
I don't
this
think,
is what.
I'm gonna go upstairs, I'm gonna have to go into the server, I'm gonna have to find it, I'm gonna have to print it. I just don't think that's a good use of my time right now.
No, I'm not saying you have to do that, I'm just saying I don't know if I wanna move this as written to second, if we're not.
The board can waive a first reading at the next, you have some options. You could move this forward to second reading, subject to we want to review another policy that's similar to it. We could do that. You could, or we could wait for Keith to show us on his computer. Or we could waive the first reading and move it straight to second at our next meeting.
I have a question.
With the changes.
Sure.
Is this, okay, I see school property. I know we do have alt-ed students that come in here, but is it really school property? Is this looks like it's really referring to individual schools, not like an SAU building. So that's what I'm wondering
We do have
about.
students here.
Right, you do have students here.
Okay.
And you are treated like the school in that if you look, the no smoking signs, the
Okay.
weapon signs, and I would hope that we would want a policy in place that's supportive to the school. The SAU is the school, especially considering we have students
Okay, yeah, okay.
that come here.
Right.
Actually, I could probably, Mr. McGuigan, do you have that policy?
I'm looking it up right now.
Because if you email it to me, I will run upstairs and quickly print. I can do that.
ICI, prohibiting weapons on school property.
I think it's right on the SAU
Yeah, I can do
website.
it.
Yeah.
You hit Northwood and,
Yeah, if you just, well, wait a minute. So you're gonna have a non-public, right?
Yeah, when we come back after the non-public, we
So,
can look at this
during a
policy.
non-public, I'll go upstairs and print the email. We can do that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so we're gonna, hey, we're done.
Hey!
So we'll take up JRCI after our non-public,
That's like
okay?
a record.
All right, committee reports. I think management committee, does everyone feel comfortable that management committee's been covered this evening? Okay, audit committee, the audit committee met. They sat with the auditor, with Mr. Campo, for a good chunk of time. Looked at every adjusting entry that was made and got an understanding of it. And we also began to talk about the policy for the fund balance. But we spent the majority of that meeting talking about those big adjusting entries, that if you look, everybody had those big adjusting entries, and it mostly came about as a result of, when you have a company and you do intercompany business within divisions, when you do your consolidated statements, you eliminate all those intercompany transactions. And so essentially what happened was two things. When the SAU was working with the districts, like say the district has an employee and there's this matter of the district's reimbursing for payment, so the employee's getting paid and the district's reimbursing, two things were happening. One, it was hitting the equivalent of an income statement, and so it was showing as revenue, and the expenses weren't showing on the other side. And two, it wasn't really being properly eliminated, and three, it needed to be a balance sheet item. Does that pretty much cover it?
That's it. Yep.
So there were significant journal entries around those types of accounting issues, and that's why there were so many large adjustments. And we have all of the adjusting entries and the details under them, if anybody chooses to look at them. And we spent, I would say, over an hour discussing that. So we did not complete the policy. We will meet again this month, and it may take 2 meetings, but we would like to come in June with that policy around fund balance. So that's that report. But it was a very thorough analysis of what happened, and then we talked with them about when they would be coming back. It's probably this month, coming up soon. And then trying to work with them around maybe, I think, Mr. Rooney, you had some thoughts about getting an earlier audit so that you can get it into your reports and all that good stuff. So, that's about that. Any questions on that?
Can I go follow up on
Yeah.
something? I just want to go back again to volunteering, needing 2 volunteers to send a manifest. I think it's better if the people who want to do this come to the SAU office at least for the first 6 months to look through the manifest. The reason is, it takes you really that long to understand how all the grants are being spent and where the money's coming from. And I would run up and down the stairs to ask Charlene questions, because if you're going to sign this and approve it, you need to understand what you're signing. So if you're here, all the people that can answer your questions are in the building. If they brought it to a meeting, Scott's there, but he might not have all the answers. You know,
I think I do pretty well.
You do pretty well. Scott does well, but I mean, you know.
And it does. I will
does.
say that at the beginning, Mrs. Hendricks and I had a lot of conversations about this and that, and really after a while, we don't really talk about it that much.
Right. It takes
Because
like
she's
6
got to
months
figure it out.
to
right?
understand like the whole,
Yeah.
where all the money's coming from and what grants are being used, what are the codes are for different grants and all that stuff.
Right.
But I had to ask a lot of questions, and if you're going to approve it, you want to make sure you know.
Alrighty, we're on to the open items. So the preschool teacher policy is something, that's the salary piece. That does need to be placed on a future agenda. Our future meeting dates, we're working on. Our governance proposal, we had a good conversation. Meeting schedules and the joint board format, again, we had a good conversation. We hope to come to some closure on that in June and the following meeting. The audit committee has been pacing exactly as expected. And the contract negotiation committee completed their work and will present to you a contract in accordance with your specifications to us this evening in non-public. At which point we'll come out, hopefully be able to approve it, and then it will be given to the superintendent.
who will at that point in time have your Northwood weapons policy.
And
We all. I'm glad you said policy.
the timeline we're continuing to develop.
I don't know where that was going.
And while we're fresh, before we go on to something else, let's just quickly tick off what you want for your agenda items in June. We want to talk about the calendar, correct? We want to review the audit committee policy on funds. We want to look at the
Procedure for the treasurer for the signing the manifest.
okay, the manifest piece. And of course, this JC 7 and 8 and
Right, all the policies.
yeah, that for the management committee, we'll make a presentation at the next meeting. Is there anything else? That's a pretty full agenda. Is there
The
anything?
number of students in each, number of special ed students in each district.
Yes, that
Got
report.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the sped report
Superintendent goals.
and the goals. We'll come back in a more final format.
I'm sorry, I'll finish, when we're done with this, I just have something.
That's okay, go ahead.
Well, I just want to take a step back in the agenda too, the calendar.
Okay. So we're good with manifest, calendar, fund balance policy. We won't be deciding on it in June, but you'll see a draft. The management committee work that you assigned tonight. We'll finish up on these policies. We'll have that sped report and we'll look at goals. That is heavy, but I think we can manage it because a lot of it will be, it's been prepped. Okay, yes,
So to take a step back, our joint board responsibilities calendar.
yeah, that timeline.
Yeah, we did nothing. I think we should try to fill some of the stuff in. Like, and I know we do have stuff that we should be doing in May and June. That's not on the calendar.
Okay.
Like the audit presentation and doing the board goals. Right. And I don't want to like. I was thinking maybe at each meeting that we should look at it like, hey, what needs to be done in May usually, right? And then while we're
Okay.
here, and I would think in May we start thinking about our finalizing goals should be on our list of things to do. Is what I would
Yeah,
think.
and then finalize them for June, just,
Sure, yeah. Something like that. I mean, we could start even earlier, but, I don't know.
I got it.
Other than the audit presentation, is that something that should be maybe even
Well, I think
April
we need
or?
to, well, I think we're hoping to move things up.
Yeah,
Okay.
that
So I
should
think
have
we
been
need to cycle
January.
through. I think this is one of those things where the auditor shows up and go, okay, this is what
Yeah,
it's gonna
okay.
be.
All right, that's fine then.
Because we don't know.
they know we want to move it. We wanted to get it in October. What we were shooting for this year was October.
We did not do well.
I was looking for detail. I mean, I just, I was
Yeah.
trying to brainstorm on things that we've
Yeah.
been doing, that's all.
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna do our final goals drop dead
June.
June, and we'll be working them through, probably April and May.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's late too, but yeah, that's probably
So
reasonable,
review.
actually, for what we can do.
And review. And we're kind of thinking we skip March, right?
Yes.
And we think we're gonna skip July.
Yes.
I just want to point out, and I know we're going to have a longer discussion on this later, but we skipped March this year,
Mhm.
and then our April meeting didn't adjourn until 9:42.
Right.
So just keep that in mind throughout.
That April meeting, we had those, well, I don't think
Oh,
we
we had
we
the audit presentation.
had audit
We would never
presentation,
have it that
and
late
we
again.
had
And the
the,
professional
Well, I feel like
development
we
plan.
always say that, but something can always come
Right,
up.
yeah,
And
right.
if we had already done our March meeting with our reorg and all of that, we could have had all those presentations and we still wouldn't have been here until 9:42, so.
that's true. Okay.
I know March ends up being odd because you want to have it after your vote and it doesn't always work out time-wise, so I understand that, but it just something to think
We
about.
are trying to push a lot into these meetings, and I think we are moving through pretty efficiently, but it's still a lot of material, especially when you have presentations.
That audit presentation was so late this year. That was very, very late, and it was because of everyone was
So we'd
new
be
in the
going in
office.
under,
C,
C?
I don't know. A, C.
Contract.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so, tonight we do have need of a non-public session, and it would be under 91, RSA 91A32A and C.
So moved.
So we have a motion from
Second.
Christine,
Second?
second from Keith, and we're going to poll in. Brian,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
you know what?
Dave
This
Ruth
list
is on
has
there.
old names, so
I
I'm
know,
gonna go
I've
back the
seen-
other way,
yeah.
sorry guys. Shane is absent, Stephanie,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
okay. Christine,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Susan, yes. Rosalind,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
okay. Bruce is absent, Debbie,
Yes.
Misty is absent, Erica,
Yes.
Carrie. All right, so we are officially in non-public at.
We're
Are
good.
you good? All right, so it is, the board has re-entered public session at 8:30 while in non-public. We discussed the superintendent's contract and no votes were taken. So we are now in our public session. I could entertain a vote regarding the contract.
So I'll make a motion to authorize the board chair to sign the contract with the professional employee contract with the superintendent. As
Second.
presented.
Okay. And I'll make that one change under page 4I.
Right.
With that one month.
Was agreed to?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I don't know if this is the time or place, but would you guys consider taking Columbus Day out and renaming it in the contract? To Indigenous Peoples Day?
Oh,
It does not change the,
Still the same.
yeah, it just makes a statement that
I have no issue with
I
that.
support that.
Is that the official name in New Hampshire?
That would be my.
That's the only thing. I mean, I agree with you, but I'd rather stick to whatever the official New Hampshire name for it is. But just to be clear.
I think we still call it in Stratford Columbus Day on our calendar.
in Nottingham, we call it Indigenous Peoples Day.
So
I don't know. I would.
you could make a motion.
I mean,
So we've
it might
got-
fail. I'll make a motion to, in the contract, change it from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, which does not have the effect of taking anything away or adding anything. It's just a name change.
So we'll do that as a sub-motion to the main motion, and we'll vote on that one first.
So
So there's
an amendment.
amendment. So, thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, so we've got an amendment to the original, just asking to change the wording on Columbus Day, so we'll vote on that first. Is there any discussion with that? All those in favor of making that change, by show of hands? All right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Anyone opposed? Okay, so that motion carries. It's a 10-2 vote. So we'll make that change. And now we'll move up to our main motion, which was to approve the contract. And we'll call that vote. All in favor of that? Okay, anyone opposed or abstained? So that motion carries unanimously with a vote of 12 in favor. All right, and now we will move to our final policy of the evening, JICI, which is now a slightly different version to be potentially moved to second reading.
Is it JLCI or JIC?
JIC.
JIC.
So what I like personally about the Northwood policy is a couple things, but specifically the third paragraph clearly states that visitors, faculty, staff, students, and volunteers are prohibited from bringing weapons. And as opposed to the original policy that we have, that's not clear. Because the beginning part specifically says students. So I think that the Northwood policy is just written really well.
I just have a question about the first paragraph. I just find it confusing.
Which part? Sorry.
The first paragraph, I guess it's still, the second line, it's part of the first sentence. Any individual knowingly possessing a firearm that has moved in or otherwise affects interstate commerce in a school zone. So I'm confused by that, moved in or otherwise
I
affects
don't think it's moving
interstate-
in, like you've moved into the town. It's that you're operating within. You're moving within that area, you're operating within that
Okay,
area.
so if we have someone driving by in a car or walking by, is that still considered a school zone and they have a gun? And, I mean, you know what I mean? So I'm confused about that.
Well, I think that the intent is exactly what the intent would be if you were prohibited from going on school grounds because you have been convicted of a sex crime.
Right.
So you might not be intending to go to the school, but you can't walk past the school. I think it's exactly the same. You just have to
I think
skirt the school.
the thing that's different about that is those people have been notified that they can't do that. But an individual who's walking, say, from the gas station down to his house down the road, we have a concealed carry. People are allowed to carry weapons. So if there's a certain, I think it's like 500 feet or something like that, would be considered a school zone. So if somebody's walking by and they have their weapon, which is perfectly legal, that's part of a school zone, and they don't know this.
Well, we're not defining this. This is just a restatement of the federal Gun-Free School Zone Act.
I guess
That's already a federal
Right?
law.
I mean, so it's not really up
It's
to
their
us. This is just
responsibility as gun owners.
And I think that's why they sign, I mean, there's so much signage around schools also.
But this isn't, I mean, I know that, you know, the schools do have a lot of signage, and we have like where the school zone begins, where it ends, but I don't know if the SAU has those same types of signs. Like, do people even know that we have kids in this building?
But how would you even know someone has a concealed weapon unless they did something to make you aware of it? And that would be a threat. It's not like, you know,
Yeah, they're gonna be
Yeah.
slamming
a little old lady in tennis shoes is walking down the road with her
Okay.
little handgun in her pants, you know, and she's just walking down the road. Who would know?
I think
Well,
the second thing, I just,
Yeah.
if I may,
Sure.
just in terms of like, jurisdiction, like, we can have this policy and I support it, but I don't think that, you know, the person walking home from the gas station has to follow our policy. You know, we don't have any.
well, this isn't prescribing anything. This is just saying this is a fact. The federal school zone act says this. That's all that paragraph
Yeah, we don't
says.
really need to debate what it
Right.
says.
I mean, 'cause
We can
it's-
debate whether
We
or
can't
not we
change
want to
it.
have
Right.
that in there, but we can't change it.
Can I make a recommendation?
You can't change federal law.
If we like this one better in general, we could move this to a second reading and make a note that we would like to potentially give some thought to a little bit of language change there and take it up at the next meeting, is that?
Except that, again, we can't.
It's federal law.
we can't
If that-
change it.
Yeah, okay, so,
So I guess I'm just wondering, you know, the people that live in the apartments in this building, the people who go to the yoga instructor over here, I mean, if they have concealed weapons, are they breaking a law?
Yes.
Yes,
they
they
They're
are.
breaking a federal law.
Yeah, so maybe they need to
Are
be
they?
notified.
I mean,
State
maybe-
needs to be posted.
So
then.
they, so
Have
that
it
needs to be
posted and
posted.
I mean, that-
notify those
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Do we have
That's
signs
not,
that say no firearms?
So then maybe we need
Let's
to.
leave some in
post
front.
it.
In the front, I have never.
You
I
know,
just have it.
and I don't, I mean, we
No,
can
same.
have
I think
signs that say no firearms, but I don't know that we have to. I think it
Right.
just needs to be designated as a school, so.
So they need to, we have
Because it's
to,
up to
need
the
to have
gun
it
owner to
posted.
know that.
Absolutely.
the,
Right,
the
right.
state
It's
hasn't
just like
accepted this federal law,
Ignorance
correct?
is no
landlord
excuse.
uses
Yourself.
The state has not yet accepted this federal
Yeah,
law.
no.
The state
Well,
is
We're not
slightly
gonna put
different
something out on
than.
the road.
Ignorance of the
Well,
law is
don't
no
enter.
excuse for breaking the law.
No, I just mean like, do not enter.
Okay.
right.
Zone.
All right, so, did you have a thought, Mr. Ray?
I didn't know if it would help the other members that weren't in Northwood to let you know where this policy came from. So we had your school district attorney, well, anybody, any of you, as school district attorney, write this policy because there was a question about faculty, and that wasn't mentioned in the other policy. Mr. McQuiggan is correct. The first paragraph of the policy is just defining what the law is. If you look further down, there's no real violation if somebody walks by with a weapon concealed or otherwise.
Would be like
It's just another version of the policy that we actually have the lawyer write and look at and fill in some holes. So that's really what it is.
So I think just for the people that live in this building and the people that work in this building, that they should be made aware. Because let's just pretend the people upstairs are having a noisy party. Somebody calls the police. They go and they say, oh, the person comes to the door and he's got a holster. Do you know this is a school zone? And they could be arrested and charged for that. And so I think that we need to notify them that this is indeed a school zone. I wouldn't think of it as a school zone because of the SAU. that it's, you know, it's not an actual school, we do have kids that go upstairs, but, so I,
Well, they would be reported to the law enforcement, but yeah.
but they could be charged with a crime, and they didn't even realize that this is officially a school zone. So I think that they should be notified, so that people don't get in trouble.
I agree with Git.
Yeah, is
Yes.
there a sign that says school zone at the front of the, at the front of the
Yeah,
SAU?
that's all.
I don't know.
Not sure.
Is there? I don't think so.
You know, it's one of those things, if I walked by it every day, I'd probably
Yeah.
not notice
Right.
it.
Yeah,
I
I don't
remember
know.
Well, I mean,
saying
because
school
technically that would also mean that the people in the apartment shouldn't have alcohol and shouldn't smoke.
Well, right, it's a drug-free school.
Well, unless you look at the second to the last paragraph where other individuals may be exempted.
Right. Which one would assume would be a tenant.
I think it's 500 feet around the building.
It's
It's
1,000.
1,000 feet, 1,000 feet.
Paragraph.
Yeah.
So there should be signs if we're gonna enforce these things, then it
Well,
needs, people need to.
We don't
know.
enforce
don't
the
enforce
federal
them.
law.
Well, I mean, if
We
we're
just
going to,
exist.
if we are saying this is a school zone, then other people should
We're
be
not saying it's a
notified.
school zone, it just is a school zone by the fact that it's a school zone.
Well, we
It's
should
a
have
school.
signage that says if it's a school zone.
Well, if it's a school zone, doesn't that change your mileage too, like the speed limit that you can go past the, if you're designated in a school zone,
Different.
Could you perhaps, since the lawyers
Okay.
wrote
does it
this,
get into all those
perhaps?
other issues?
I don't
Just
think that's-
pass
I
it.
wrote check into, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
no, I'm
getting
just saying,
there.
if it's already.
Hey guys, would it be possible to just, since the attorneys wrote this and they wrote it for an actual physical school, perhaps Mr. Rooney could just check in with them and have them weigh in with what changes they may need,
Right.
or what
Well, I don't-
signage, or
This is a physical school though, as well.
then we should maybe get the signs up and just make sure.
Well, it also covers
Everyone's
the
aware.
preschool.
Isn't that
But
dictated
that's
by
in
the
the
law?
message, but, I mean,
I mean, are you
because we all
interested
pay.
in that, just having a follow-up maybe?
We need to ask the attorney if we should have signs about it, because I think that that's,
You don't know.
if it's a school zone, we need to notify people. And people in the building should be
Okay, we'll just
notified.
follow up.
Attendance, and they are
I got it.
by definition.
We'll just follow up and,
They're
yeah.
not being regulated.
So,
Regardless.
So we need
The
to
definition of
understand the
school zone is
definition of a
not
school
our
zone, and we
call.
need to
It's not within our
understand
jurisdiction.
what-
Whether we are going
Yeah.
to define
See,
it, I think.
8:30
I
is
don't think
definitely
we're-
our bewitching hour. We
I think
cannot,
so.
we, okay, so, guys,
Okay.
everyone,
Yes.
okay,
If we are.
so, we're having a lot of conversations about this. What is the board's pleasure, moving this forward to second reading,
Can I make a
or what would you like to do?
I would like to make a motion that we move the policy JICI from the Northwood School District to second reading with the understanding that we're going to get legal advice on how to move forward and any language changes that might need to change regarding school zones.
For SAUs, right.
Okay.
I'll second that.
So we've got Christine and Roslyn, and Mr.
Can I further ask that we make any amendments to building level administration? You know, like, I think it says principal in here, it should be superintendent or whatever, you know, and
Okay.
district versus school SAU.
So kind of
and
clean
stuff
it
like
up
this.
from a
Yeah.
district to an SAU
Right.
level, we'll go to,
Whoa, wait a minute, because your student services director is your building administrator for the
Okay,
preschool.
that's fine, then that makes more sense. to me.
So
Let's do
he's
that.
considered your principal.
would the
I'm fine with
preschool be
that.
subject to
That
Mr.
was
Northwood?
Byrne.
I thought Ms. LaValle
No, she's the assistant.
May I ask one quick
was. She runs
question?
the preschool.
She is, but she's not your principal.
Since the preschool is physically residing in Northwood, would it not be subject to their policy? Or would it be subject to whatever we do here?
Well,
And we can answer it next time. I
the
just-
building administration in Northwood doesn't supervise your preschool. I mean, they do in an emergency.
Okay.
They'll say, hey, but your
Well,
day-
but conversely, we couldn't say the SAU policy, fantasy, I am not suggesting this is what we do. But the SAU could say, it's fine to bring guns to the SAU, and we couldn't say, and therefore it's okay to bring them to the preschool, because the preschool is managed by the SAU.
Well, I
They
think
would have to follow the Northwood, because they're physically
That's
housed there
probably
for
something-
these purposes.
That's probably something that would be defined by the contract between SAU and Northwood, the renters agreement or something, you know, the lease.
I wouldn't, okay.
Right, I mean, if there was a difference of policy, it's something that should be addressed there, I would think.
with the districts, they're signing it, and-
Right.
yeah,
Right,
okay. So look into that too.
but I think you're right, I think you're.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second to move this forward, subject to all of these items that we would have reviewed. And so, is there any other discussion on this one? Hearing none, all those in favor of moving it to second? All right, anybody abstaining or opposing? All right, so this one unanimously moves forward. All right, do we have any other business that you wish to bring before this board this evening?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, so we are all in favor of adjourning, 8:45.
Yes.